Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters and writers and journalists and all different people who are putting stuff out in the borough of the Bronx. We also talk to photographers and filmmakers and artists. And in our second segment today, we're going to talk to people from one of the foremost photography groups in the Bronx and in the city of New York, En Foco. And we'll do that in our second segment. But right now, let's talk schools and let's bring on a fabulous reporter for Chalkbeat New York. It is Alex Zimmerman. Nice to have you on the Bronx Buzz, Alex. Nice to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Lots to talk about. Obviously, schools are open as we get into the holiday season, and I guess people will be taking a break. You won't take a break, I'm sure, because there's always stuff to write about. But let's talk budgets. One of the things that happened is we have less enrollment in the schools, and accordingly, I suppose, the city backed off some of the funding for schools. Let's talk a little bit about where we are at. First, the mayor said he was going to cut the budget, and then all of a sudden now they're restoring some funding. Where are we at as far as funding our public schools in the Bronx and the city of New York?
Yeah, so the new administration has argued that, thanks to falling enrollment, school budgets need to be brought in line with the number of students who are actually enrolled. And that's a break from the last administration, which used a bunch of federal pandemic relief money to sort of plug school budget gaps. So even if your enrollment fell, they were holding schools harmless. They were saying, we understand that this is a really difficult moment for schools. There's lots of pandemic related academic struggles students are dealing with. And so we want schools to have all the resources they can. This administration has said, the federal relief money is one-time money, and it's time to start dialing back that hold harmless policy. So if a school lost students, they should get less money. And so the new administration has started phasing that back in. Now, there's a quirk in the process where this DOE every year projects the number of students a school will have and then funds them based on that level. But the number of students who actually show up can be different from that projection. So typically, if you enroll fewer students than you thought you were going to, the city will claw money back from you in the middle of the school year. And so, this school year, there was like a lot of drama around that. Like, was the city going to continue that policy, which had been suspended during the pandemic? And sort of at the last moment, the Adams administration decided that they were not going to cut school budgets mid-year. But that still won't mean that, schools that had their budgets cut to account for lower enrollment still wouldn't see budget cuts. There will still be many public schools that have
You know,
smaller
I,
budgets this
I
year.
can I can see both sides of the issue. I can see certainly you say, well, listen, if you don't have that many students, we've got to back off. I can also see the other argument that says, listen, we know how important school funding is. We know how our kids need every opportunity and every resource they can get. So if the numbers are down, but the money is the same, why not just spend that money and do a little bit better? And I have to add in one of the wrinkles, of course, is, and I don't know exactly what the numbers are, maybe 23,000. How many thousands of students are now in the schools because of the migrant crisis and the number of families that were sent here? And I'm sure you talk to schools that are saying, hey, we're inundated, we're taking care of them, but you got to remember, there's a limit to what we can do with the number of teachers we have, the number of staff, the number of books, and everything else.
Right.
Is the news overall good, or we still need people like you and your colleague Michael Elson Rooney to stay on top of it to let us know how we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point you raised about the migrant population, which has
Yeah.
really changed the picture somewhat, in the sense of, there are lots of schools that have more students than they anticipated because there are thousands of students who have arrived, sort of since the school year started. The numbers on that are like a little bit hard to pin down because the DOE doesn't ask about immigration status, but probably talking about in the 5 to 7,000 student range so far. It's sort of the estimates that city officials
Is
have
that
been
the number?
giving.
I think when I was thinking 23,000, that was probably the total number of migrants. And so that would translate into maybe, thank you for clearing that up. I misspoke there. Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
about
but
5,000.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
that's right.
did you want to add something else to that? Because if not, I've got the next budget
Go for it.
question. All right.
Yeah.
Specialized high schools, and this is another one where I can see both sides. So they're talking about cuts to specialized high schools. on one hand, yes, these are the schools, and I don't want to say these are haves versus have-nots because there's a wide variety of students that attend, but maybe you back off that because you have a huge homeless population, et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, if you've got great schools and you start taking money out of them, what do you think is going to happen to those schools? So I can see both sides. Where are we at with cuts to specialized high schools?
Yeah, so that proposal came out of a working group that was assembled to sort of rethink the way that school budgets are allocated. And there's this sort of complicated funding formula that determines how much money each school gets. That is generally determined on a per student basis, but there are additional weights for students who are in temporary housing, or actually there isn't for that, but there are additional weights for students who are behind grade level, or students with disabilities or English learners. So it is a fairly progressive funding formula. So students with higher needs come with more money. But there's this special carve out for about 13 very competitive high schools where they get a little bit more than $1,000
Bronx High
per
School of
student
Science,
extra.
Brooklyn Tech, High School for American Studies, and on and on and on. Go ahead. I just wanted
Right.
to
So
be
the specialized high
clear.
schools, but plus there are a handful of other schools that the DOE has never really explained why they get this funding
Oh,
boost, but do get a funding boost. Um,
wow.
so there's like a little bit of a black box element to that. But anyway, there's this funding group, and it should be this funding group has basically said one way of reallocating funding in a way that might be beneficial to more high need students would be to eliminate the special bonus that comes with students who attend these handful of very selective schools,
As I
and
said,
that
I
came in
can
the
see both sides of that. That is that I understand it. On the other hand, if we don't fund the students who are having a hard time in the lower grades, they're never going to get to the specialized high school.
right. And then there's a whole broader debate, right, about whether all school budgets or the school funding formula should only add money, right? So instead of like cutting from one set of schools to help out another set of schools that have large high need populations, like should we essentially hold schools harmless and only add additional money for different student groups? And so this school funding group didn't exactly reach a conclusion on that. It's going to be up to the mayor and the school's chancellor what to do with those recommendations. But overall, the recommendations were mostly designed to disproportionately help schools that serve higher need
High need
student
students.
populations.
Yeah, it's a difficult question. Another thing that has come up and it raised my eyebrows. I attended way back when an independent pre-K school, an independent nursery school, and they were. This I thought was remarkable. Of course, dealing with the DOE over the years and the Board of Ed, nothing should surprise you. But there has always been this competition between the independent nursery schools, maybe from a community center or another group that funds a preschool, and the DOE's preschools. And now the people in the independent schools are saying, "Hey, where's our funding?" That's you know the kids are all the same. It's not like one
Right.
should get and one should not get. But now, as I understand, I guess pre-K kind of they won the battle, and they're finally going to get the monies that they're due. Do I have
Well,
that
we'll
right?
see. We'll
We'll
see, I
see.
think. I mean, so
I'm
you're
trying.
right. Yeah, the early childhood education landscape is really complicated. There are some students who are served in sort of Department of Education schools and buildings, but actually many students are served through these community-based organizations, these nonprofit private
Right.
providers that have contracts with the city. And that was one way that the prior administration was able to achieve universal pre-K for 4-year-olds and a big expansion of pre-K for 3-year-olds was relying on these private nonprofit groups. And so they have all these contracts with the city, and there have been these it seems like the problems have intensified recently in terms of the city's ability to pay those providers on time. And so that has been like a huge controversy. And right now, as of the end of last fiscal year, those providers were owed about $140 million from the city. Um, and so the city recently announced that
Oh
it
my
was going to try
goodness,
to
a
speed
hundred.
up the. Yeah.
It's just a lot. That's a lot of money. And you think
Of
about all
course.
the teachers and that they and not-for-profits, who we in the Bronx rely on a lot, community-based organizations, et cetera, what are they supposed to do? I mean,
Right. So that's a big problem, and it can have big implications in terms of your ability to keep your doors open, which in turn has implications for whether there are enough seats available to serve all of the students
and
who need a pre-K seat.
and so let's just play that out. Let's just say, which we would never want to see, that some of these schools would have to then close. Those children will then go to presumably, DOE based, pre-K, et cetera. You're gonna have to fund them anyway. You know what I mean? So, I mean, and your story was New York City now vows to pay those pre-K providers, so you think that money will 140 million will be forthcoming.
Yeah, I think that's what the DOE is promising. I think we'll see how quickly that comes through. Payment issues to these providers is not a new issue. It's been an issue in the past as well, but the scope and scale of this seems to be worse than it has in the past. And yeah, it just has real implications for the sector's ability to provide pre-K seats.
We only got about a minute or so left. I just want to ask you, the mood in the state legislature is to raise the cap on charter schools for the people coming into office beginning in January. That seems to be the trend. And I believe I saw something in Chalkbeat that charter schools now are showing greater enrollment. Do you think, and again, we just have a short amount of time, do you think that we're going to be licensing more charter schools and then those are going to be becoming more popular over time?
I mean, we'll see. It was interesting that Kathy Hochul, sort of in the final moments of her gubernatorial race, decided to come out in favor of raising the charter cap. I think it'll probably be an uphill battle in the state legislature. I would, I'm not sure
All
it's a
right.
sure thing that they would raise the cap.
So this is what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to watch what happens, and then when we have some idea, we'll call Alex Zimmerman back from Chalkbeat and say, "So now where are we at?" Listen, Alex, your work is so important to all of us, and the folks at Chalkbeat New York are just doing a fantastic job. There's nothing more important than educating our children, and second to that is the people who report on it. So thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Any Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Great. All right, we're going to take a short break and then change gears, and it'll be En Foco. We're going to go to take pictures. We'll be right back.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how's sketches, vaping? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You didn't turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending, right, Backpack Kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Dear moms and dads, what you have achieved here today is going to help us and our futures. It is why we are coming up on stage to collect your diplomas.
You know it's true.
Mom, we love you always.
Everything I do.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
All right, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. Thanks so much to Alex Zimmerman. Always does a great job for Chalkbeat. But we're going to switch gears now, as we always do in the middle of our show. And we talk to people who are putting stuff out in the borough of the Bronx, and our buddies from En Foco. What an amazing job they do all the time. So we'll say hello to Program Director Oscar Rivera. Nice to have you with us, Oscar. And the lens-based, I don't even know what that means, lens-based program coordinator for En Foco is Kay Hickman. Nice to have you with us, Kay. Oscar, let's just get started. For people who don't know what En Foco is, who En Foco is, I don't know where they've been, but let's bring them on board, because this is one of the staple arts organizations in our borough of the Bronx and in the city of New York. So go to it, Oscar. Lay it on us. Well, En Foco.
Absolutely. So for anyone who might not be familiar, En Foco is a nonprofit organization that has historically been based in the Bronx, and since 1974 has made it its mission to champion for artists of color, making sure that they are receiving opportunities for exhibitions, fundraising, professional development. Initially, it started out because a group of 3 photographers realized that they didn't have the opportunities that some of their contemporaries had, and they figured out the solution is to just make them for themselves. And that's what we've been doing since day one.
Well, let me ask you this, just for you. Why is it now? Are you a photographer? And that's number one. And then number two, why is it important for you to kind of dedicate your professional work to En Foco and promoting artists and doing the work that you just described?
Yeah, so I'm a photographer. And for me, I realized during I guess, college stage of my career that there weren't many faces in the room that looked like mine, that experienced things that I have experienced, or that just understood heritage and culture in the way that me and my people do. And I know that that's a really large part of expression and developing as a person and an artist. And finding a place like En Foco where that is our mission, it made perfect sense for me.
You know, what really is interesting, and I've interviewed so many different photographers, many will talk about, well, you know, the process of capturing an image and interpreting it the way I see and all that stuff. But with En Foco, it's always been there's a very important aspect of self-identity involved. That it's not only the act. I wish I had a camera here as a prop. That's not, although we all have one of these now, so you could just use that. It's not only the act of taking the photo; it's the fact that this is my expression of who I am, of who my people are. I mean, I'm not making it up, because you just expressed that. That's what makes it so important. Let's just go to Kay with a similar kind of question, and then we're going to show some pictures, and we're going to talk about 2 really important exhibits. Kay, for you, why is this important? You're a photographer, presumably, right?
Yes.
And why is it important that you participate in En Foco and help pursue this mission?
I mean, I really align with their mission, and the fact that they help artists of color, photographers of color.
And prior to getting involved with En Foco, did you feel, I don't want to extend it and say a sense of frustration and say, gee, I wish I had somebody around me who looks like me, who does, to just talk to me about that versus now that you have En Foco with you.
Yeah, being able to have like a good mentor to help you, further your career and know.
Yeah. And kind of somebody that you can follow after and show stuff, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
What kinds of images? Now, the images we're going to show are not necessarily yours or Oscar's, but what kinds of things do you like to take pictures of?
I love documenting the culture around Brooklyn. I go to a lot of different events, and like one of the things that brought me to photography is being able to freeze the frame and just keep a record of like what's going on around.
Make things iconic as you go along. I can understand that. So there are 2 exhibits. Let's first talk about Resistance for Freedom, which is one of them, and that Oscar did, and then we'll talk about the Utopian Voyage, which Kay was involved in. Oscar, let's talk about Resistance for Freedom, and we'll show some of these pictures as well.
Yeah, well, just to clarify, Kay is actually the curator for both exhibitions.
For both.
I'm just the program director for En Foco.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll let you start with Resistance for Freedom anyway.
Resistance for Freedom is an exhibition that features four of En Foco's applying artists. And so we have our fellowship and our grant opportunities.
Let's show Anderson. Let's put up some of these pictures. Go ahead.
And so artists who apply who might not win are always considered for further programming. And these four artists are from that group. And so we've got Chris Cook here. And the other artist is Chris Cook, Franceli Flores, Lawrence Sumalong, who's a past fellowship winner. And the last one is Jeremy Dennis. And so I can let Kay speak a little more about these, but the thought behind this exhibition is, how do people of color exist in spaces? Because sometimes just existing is political, and being who you are unapologetically and filling space as you demand it is revolutionary. And so that's kind of what we were thinking about here. We were looking at how artists are using their voices to stand up for things, and sometimes that motion of standing up is just being who you are.
You know, looking at those images, each one of them takes your breath away, to be honest. And so if you step back and people think about seeing them all in a gallery, all of a sudden there's a message that comes through. It would seem to me. Kay, did you go out to the artists and say, hey, we're doing a thing called Utopian Voyage. Would you take pictures for us that would fit? Or did they just have these photos and you said, oh, okay, we'll use this one, this one, this one, and this? Like, how do you put an exhibit like this together?
Yeah, it was definitely work featuring, we were definitely featuring work that was already made. Yeah, I guess the artist didn't really have time to create new work.
Right. It's very, very easy to say, go ahead, take your camera and come back with award-winning work.
Right. But yeah, we chose from the existing work. And it was just a matter of selecting work that kind of spoke to each other and, helped define our mission, for you.
And in terms of Utopian Voyage, what does that mean to you? What does that say about the work that you're looking for?
I guess it's an explosion. I'm sorry.
That's
It's
okay.
an exploration of the notion of what it would look like if people of color created their ideal future realities.
Here we go.
So yeah, and it really talks about.
Keep going.
Well, we were just looking at Christina Bartley's work,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of I noticed a reoccurring theme throughout all of the artists' work, and it's about self-reflection and healing.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Keep going, Anderson. Let's see some more pictures. They're so stirring.
And that's
You know that
Amoy Gill.
this is an amazing photograph because it looks like an apple. That's
Mm.
where it's like I was like, oh, an apple, but then I was like, wow, it's somebody's back.
Yeah.
And look at how that speaks to you about who this person is and the way they see the world. Tremendous.
For me, there's a tenderness in some of these images
Oh,
because
very much so.
we're conceptualizing a future free of colonialism and what that looks like for cultures, and not just Afrofuturism or indigenous cultures, but what that could look like for queer people, trans people, in spaces where some of these binary thoughts are rigid and firm. We're looking at a lot of softness here, and I think that duality really is special.
Do you see results? Do you see the effect of these things? Do artists say, "Wow, I worked so hard at putting this image together, and now I have opportunity"? And even with people who see it, we'll ask both of you. Start with you, Oscar. Um, what is the effect of it? I have to tell you, for me, even just looking at them when we saw them beforehand, but looking at them now, they really have impact. They're emotional. So, Oscar, talk a little bit about the effect of these things, and then we'll ask Kay the same question.
Yeah, absolutely. So En Foco works with artists in a bunch of different ways, and primarily through our fellowships in Revalus. There is a long-lasting record of artists who have come through our doors, and we're just a way station for them. We show them in a show or in Revalus, and then they go on, and that recognition gets them fellowships other places, or they move on, and the funding helps them complete a project that they can then apply for other funding with.
Hmm.
So for En Foco, it's important for us to make sure that our artists are moving through us onto other things. And that's where it is for us, making sure that we're getting our artists recognition and attention, and they're reaping the benefits of that.
And this is what Kay was just talking about a moment ago, that she said, well, I was this, and now I have people around me, people that I can bounce my work off of. But Kay, then the same question for you. Do you see response? Do you have anybody in mind? You say, wow, this person really benefited from being included in our galleries and in our shows and in the dialogue, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, yeah, it's important for artists to get their work out there in front of, a bigger audience. And En Foco is like, one of the main staples in our community that helps
With
push that.
with the artists that you work to curate and select, did they have a range of photos, that fit, or like in other words, were there five of I almost said the guy with the apple of the back with the flowers on top, and they had all different angles, or was it very obvious to you that this one's got to be, this one's got to be, this one's got
Yeah, it definitely took a while to like narrow down
Really?
which images work together.
hmm
Yeah, it was
Oscar,
a
about
process.
how many artists are and photographers are involved in Foco at any one time? I mean, I
Oof.
know there's everybody, as I said, everybody's got one of these. They can go out and shoot all the time, but about how many do you have engaged?
It varies. So we offer 10 fellowships through our fellowship a year. So that's 10 artists that we're working with in that program every year. We offer a media fund, which is another 5. We do 2 issues of Nueva Luz with between 3 and as many as 20 artists in an issue. We do between 3 and 4 exhibitions. So we are a revolving door of artists in our community coming through and finding ways to get their work shown and to have their voices heard.
For artists, for photographers, and people who want to be involved and who are watching us right now and say, this would be good for me. How do they get in touch with Enfoco?
So they can find us at enfoco.org. They can send us emails at info@enfoco.org. We're on Twitter and Facebook at Enfoco, and Instagram at @enfoco_.
Just put Enfoco in your Google thing and it'll
Yeah,
show
and
up
it'll all pop up.
everywhere. And you'll
Much
see
easier.
that.
Definitely works.
That's an easy way to do it. Listen, you guys are great. I can't tell you how much we at BronxNet respect what you do and support what you do. So Oscar Rivera, who's the program director of Enfoco, thank you so much. Kay Hickman, the lens-based program coordinator, thank you both for your commitment to doing this for our people, for the people of the Bronx. It's just spectacular what you do, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. The pleasure is
Yeah,
ours.
Great.
definitely. Thank you.
Folks, that will do it for the Bronx Buzz. We thank Alex from Chalkbeat. We thank our friends from Enfoco for joining us. And, next week we'll be back with more. Happy holidays, everybody.